Hey there, are you trying to find your first job in user experience? Maybe you've been working in the field for a while and you're trying to figure out your next move. In this video, I want to share with you some tips on how to figure out what role is best for you in the world of user experience. So I am Sarah Doody, a user experience designer and entrepreneur. And these episodes are filled with honest answers and insights to your questions about user experience design and technology. And I wanted to do a little series on careers in UX because a lot of people ask me about this right now. So this video is going to cover what you should think about when you're considering a role in user experience. So where the heck do you begin? I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is that you have to know yourself and you have to know your strengths really, really well. You see, a big mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they really don't spend enough time considering, what do I want out of this job? What suits me? What is interesting to me? How is this job going to help me in my future career path? What are my goals? What are my weaknesses? And I think we don't do a good enough job kind of hitting pause in our job search and taking time to do a little bit of a self inventory to figure out, what role really is best for me. So hopefully you can take some tips to figure out how to do a little bit of a self-assessment for yourself as you are either trying to get your first job in user experience or make a move within the field. So first of all, how do you figure out your strengths as a designer? I think that one of the best things that I honestly did in my career was to spend time being what I call a generalist. Now, I know not everyone will have the luxury to be able to do this, but when I was starting out, I was able to be at a company that allowed me to kind of dabble in all parts of user experience. So it was a small team. There weren't very specific roles. There wasn't just a research team and just a visual design team. So as a generalist, I got to experience what it was like to do research and be involved in the experience design side of things, meaning user flows, wireframes, customer journeys, things like that. I also got to be a little bit involved in visual design and front-end development, where the coders would send us something on a development server and we would get to kind of tweak it with them as the development process continued. And the benefit to kind of being able to be involved in all those parts of the user experience and product development process is that I got to kind of sample all the different parts of the field and figure out what interested me and what did not interest me. So if you're not sure where you fit in kind of the umbrella of user experience, I'd say find a way to get a job in a company that will allow you to be a generalist. And I would say those types of companies are probably smaller. They don't have siloed teams for research or visual design or experience design and things like that. And it's probably going to be a smaller team where you can kind of have your hands in a lot of different parts of the experience. It's really great because it just helps you figure out, wow, I really love research and I didn't even know that. Or, wow, I might have a talent for visual design, but doing it every day, I don't like that. So take a chance to be a generalist and figure out where you fit. Another thing to consider is figuring out, what type of company culture really suits you. So by that, I don't just mean, the size of the company, but I also mean things like, what is your learning style? What is your management style? How much kind of hands-on time do you need? Are you at a point in your career where you need a lot of mentorship and guidance? You might be new and you might have the skills, but you might not be confident in those skills. And so maybe you're looking for a lot of feedback from a manager to kind of confirm that you know your stuff, but also grow. So if you're looking for a position that has the opportunity to have more feedback, those are questions that you want to be asking in the interview process to make sure that that manager or whoever you're reporting to has the capacity to give you that kind of one-on-one time that you might crave. Whereas if you're kind of more of an independent type person, then if the role is such that it's very structured and there's lots of team building and things like that, that might not suit you. So those are what I mean when I think about company culture, beyond obviously the size of the company, the type of the company, things like that. I would also say, though, the size of the team matters, because that will be an indicator as to how much you would get the opportunity to be a generalist or a specialist. So depending on what you think you need at this stage in your career right now, take the time to ask those questions and do the research to figure out, how big is this UX team? Is it a UX team of 3, or is it a UX team of 30 or 300? Those are very different experiences, depending on what role you might take. Now, one book that was really transformational, I would say, in my career was the book, Now Discover Your Strengths. And I'll link to it in the notes below. But this book was awesome because it helped me kind of identify key characteristics that I didn't even really realize were strengths, or I'd never really labeled as strengths of myself. But once I read this book and there's a little test you can do, I realized, wow, I actually am good at that. And one of those things was teaching. The other ones I think was leadership, problem solving. So this book, might be a great one to read if you're kind of at that stage where you're trying to figure out your role, your next move, and just help kind of remind you of underlying skills that maybe you haven't used in a while, or that you didn't even really recognize, but maybe you should consider exploring in your next role. Now, before you jump into kind of going about the actual job search, like I said in the beginning, it's really important to hit pause and do that self-assessment, because a lot of times we get roped up in that job search, but you're skipping a step there. You need to hit pause and do that research. Just like you're building a product, you just don't jump into product development, you do the research. So in the same way, don't just jump into finding jobs. Do the research on yourself to figure out what roles are going to suit you best in the world of user experience, depending on what interests you, what stage of your career you're at, and what you hope to kind of get out of this next role, assuming it's going to last, 18 to 24 to 36 months or something like that. And take time to kind of map that out so that you have kind of a guiding post going forward, so that you're not just blindly going through job search listings, but that you have a filter basically where you can say, this is where I want to be in X number of years. Therefore, this job doesn't make sense for me, or these 3 look like a really great fit. So know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and know where you want to head in the future. Those are things you should identify as you go about creating kind of a self-assessment before you begin your job search. So I hope this helps you as you start to figure out what role in UX is going to suit you best. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to learn more about user experience, you can pop over to the UX Notebook and get my weekly user experience newsletter. It goes out every Friday and it's full of tons of tips, activities, discussion questions for you and your team to help teach you how to think like a designer. And stay tuned, because in the next video, I'm going to address where do you go to find UX jobs. They're listed all over. Are there certain places that are better than others? So I'll address that in the next video. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.